All right, what's going on YouTube? This is BoxingWave, and I wanted to make one last heavyweight video before we moved on. I'm probably gonna still do content on it, but I wanted to give it some closure. Maybe I'll go on live and talk about it a little bit more because I love going on live. I like making these videos. I'm trying to do a little bit of both. I want to make videos, I want to record, but I also want to go on live. Like lately, the last few months, I've been going on live a lot more often because I like to interact with you guys as I'm making and creating the content. But some people like shorter videos. They don't like the long live videos where I'm on there for hours sometimes. And so I have to make these videos too. But I want to talk about the heavyweight division, and just give it some sort of closure. It's been a wild month. We got Joshua who lost to Usyk last month, and then you have Wilder now losing to Tyson Fury. Okay, a couple of weeks later, and listen, the Wilder and Fury fight was a classic to me. When I say to me, there's people that's leaving comments saying that it wasn't a classic, it was a one-sided fight. Listen, it's a classic to me. Okay, I enjoyed the fight. I already expressed that. I enjoyed it, and many people are saying it's a classic because a lot of people were highly entertained by the fight. It was a classic to me. There's a few classics out there to me. I thought Klitschko and Joshua was a classic. I thought that even the other two fights in the Fury and Wilder fights were great. I thought the first one was a classic. I also thought that Wilder against Luis Ortiz one was a classic. These are the greatest fights in this division as far as a championship level fights. Not all of them are good, not all of them are great. But certain fights are better than others. People prefer other fighters. Some people prefer Joshua and Usyk fight over this fight. And when I say I think it was a classic, it's because it was a war. You got two fighters that both got knocked down, they got dropped. Both fighters were hurt. And it's just the drama of it all. It was very exciting. This is what I watch boxing for fights like that. That's the fight that I want to see. I also want to see the technical fights too. But just an action-packed fight like that, a lot of suspense. Even though Fury was winning at some point, I still was watching and thinking like, this fight can turn around at any moment because Wilder is connecting. And one of those shots, if it connects hard enough, like the one that did in the fourth round, Fury could get dropped again. And that's what makes the fight exciting. Also, Fury is throwing big enough punches to drop Deontay Wilder. So, it was a classic to me. People are going to remember this fight more than all of the other fights, in my opinion. Now, I read a lot of comments, and even when I was on live the other day, I think someone asked me, where do I place Fury on an ATG list? Like, how do I see it? And this is the thing. Not every title holder is an ATG fighter, okay? All the fighters that win titles, they're definitely going to be cemented in some form or fashion. Not all of them are going to be Hall of Famers, and not all of them are going to be all-time greats, But my whole point with this is the heavyweight division is still incomplete. There still needs to be work. There's still work that needs to be done with all of these fighters. Okay. Being that the fighters of today are not that active, being that the majority of them only fight once or twice, if we're talking the elite level fighters, the majority of them don't fight no more than once or twice a year, and sometimes they skip years due to injuries or just due to whatever, Fighters are not that active. So being that they're not that active, I would like to see them fight the very best. If you're not going to give us a lot of fights, if you're just going to go straight to the point, at least give us the fights that you want. That's the way I view boxing, and some people will say, like, problem with boxing It's these rematch clauses, because they're holding up the division. And the thing is, I would agree with that. And in certain instances, I agree with that based on the fact that fighters, again, are not active enough. So rematch clauses could hold up the division. It could hold up a full year of the division or those specific titles, right? But if fighters were more active, right, and fighting more than twice a year, it wouldn't be that much of a problem, because rematch clauses goes back to the very beginning. I mean, most of these fighters fought 3, 4, maybe even 5 times. And it wasn't so much of a problem then, or I don't think it was. I don't know what people were discussing at that time. I just, I'm not the biggest historian, but, I know enough to go back into the time and bring up certain fights. And I know that a lot of these top fighters have fought twice, 3 times even, had trilogy. Some of them had 4 fights. And I'm talking about all in boxing, not just the heavyweights. But I think when it comes to holding up the current heavyweights, as much as I praise Tyson Fury for what he's done by beating Klitschko and dethroning the former best guy in the heavyweight division, whether you have Vladimir or Vitaly, when he won and picked up those 3 titles, he retired and broke the titles up. And if we were to talk about holding up the division, that is something that held up the division. Because the moment that Tyson Fury won 3 of those titles, if he had stuck around, maybe had a rematch with Vlad, and maybe Wilder would have fought his mandatory, by the very next year, which I believe was 2016, we might have had an undisputed then. We might have had an undisputed several times at some point, because there was a point where there was only 2 champions for a while, right? Well, there were only 2 champions when the Klitschko brothers was running the show. Then when Wilder came in, and then when Fury came in, there was still only 2 champions. Now, when Fury retired, he broke up the belts, but Joshua came through and picked them up fairly quickly, right? Picked 3 of them up pretty quickly, right? Beat Charles Martin, went after Klitschko, fought, unified, and then went and beat Joseph Parker. Didn't take much time. I'm not going to look it up. I don't have any. I should have had everything pulled up, but I'm not looking up anything. But yeah, it took a quick time, and there was a point where it was just Joshua and Wilder again, and these 2 couldn't get it together. They couldn't get it right. And I'm not going to go through the whole history. I don't need to. You guys know the deal. But an undisputed fight was never made. Tyson Fury comes back in the game. Wilder gives him an opportunity. Let me repeat, Wilder gave him the opportunity, and I'm going to get back to that momentarily. But Wilder gave Tyson Fury a fight. They fought to a draw, and they agreed to fight 2 more times. Joshua loses, picks up his belt, loses again, and now we're at where we're at because Usyk is in the building. He's here. We all want undisputed. If Fury and Usyk decide, we're going to do it up now, it would have to take Joshua to step back. It would have to take Dillian White or the winner of his next fight to step back. I don't see that happening. Seems more complicated than even the arbitration situation, It's just too much complications. We're not going to get it. But work still needs to be done. None of these guys has clearly proven anything or proven dominance over this division. None of these guys have completely proven anything. Now, we might rank guys differently, right? We might rank them, based on a fight-by-fight basis. All right, I have Fury as number one. I have Usyk as number two. I have Joshua or Wilder or White or whatever way you have it ranked, right? You might have it ranked personally, or it could be Ring Magazine, or it could be BoxRec. It doesn't matter. It's no different from a pound for pound list. Everyone has one. Everyone has a favorites list. Everybody has a pound for pound list. Everyone has some sort of list, their own list. But if fighters actually fought each other, we wouldn't need these lists because it would be proven in the ring. Now, Tyson Fury, again, I give him credit. I give him credit for beating Klitschko. I give him credit for being Deontay Wilder. Wilder was undefeated, but he fought him 3 times. Now the draw is a draw. I understand the rematch, but you fought him 3 times. You didn't fight Joshua. You didn't fight Dillian White. You didn't fight Povetkin. You haven't fought Usyk yet. In between that Klitschko fight and those Wilder fights, who did you really fight? You will fight the super elite, but every one of those in-between fights, you would bring yourself right back down to fighting normal journeymen. You will fight journeymen in between. You weren't keeping it consistent, fighting tough fight after tough fight, fighting undefeated fighters that had been in the ring with other tough fighters that were undefeated. You didn't fight any of those dudes. They were all tune-ups for Fury in between the Wilder and Klitschko fight. There's still more work that needs to be done. You didn't have any title defenses. You just had your first for a 2-time champion. And for a man that's the only guy that's actively boxing that's held all 4 of the major titles and the linearship. You have held all 4, but not simultaneously. There's a responsibility that you need as a champion to defend those titles. We can't overlook that. We can't overlook linealship. We can't do that. We can't overlook that. But there are times where linealship doesn't mean that you're the man. Yes, you beat the man when you beat him, but you also retired. People came into the game and cleaned up your mess, picked up the titles that you won when you beat that guy. Now when you come back, you have to prove again that you're the man. That's just the way it works. You just don't leave when you want. When you have obligations as a champion and come back and just say, I'm the man again, that's not how it works. Yes, you were still lineal champion. All right, you wasn't gone enough for them to long enough to strip that from you, but you still have Wilder there to become undisputed. You have Joshua now, the guy that cleaned up your belts. You know, Ali left as the lineal champion when he got drafted or when he got suspended. When he was out the game for those few years, Joe Frazier was that dude when he came back. He had to fight him. And he lost. You had a former champion that was stripped. And you had Joe Frazier who came through and cleaned up the mess. I wouldn't want to call it a mess because it's not like the Fury situation while Ali, I'm not comparing Ali, but let me just put it out there because I don't want people to go in the comments, oh, calm down. It's a difference. But Joe Frazier won. Joe Frazier won that first fight against Ali. And that fight was to determine who was the true champ. So in this scenario, Tyson Fury would have had to fight Joshua too. If Joshua was still holding the titles, and he should still fight Joshua at some point. But right now, Usyk is the guy with the belt, so it'll be him. He's a priority. He's the guy with the belts. You know, we have more work to do. And that's not just Fury. Fury, listen, as far as talent, I think he can compete with anybody from any time. I've already said this. I think Tyson Fury has the skills to compete with any generation. Do I think he'll definitely take his L's and losses? You know, you don't just beat Wilder and Klitschko in the last stages of his career and say that he can beat everyone that's ever boxed. That's not how it works. I know a lot of people are saying that, but that's not how it works. It doesn't work that way. You just don't beat those two guys and just go and say like, okay, they're the best, period. No. Some of these great champions, what made them special, what made them actually special, is not like Fury, where people are saying like, look at a guy and his size and his dimensions, and people are shocked that he can move the way he moves. Okay, but his size is also an advantage. His reach is also an advantage. Yes, he moves for a guy that looks like he can't move because he's a big, chubby man, right? He doesn't look fit, but he is. He just doesn't look like it. But all of these other fighters before his time were special for different reasons, you know? And before we're just going to be quick to replace these fighters with Tyson Fury, before we go and rush and do that, because I know that's what people like to do today. Like as soon as someone has a good, record or a good KO streak, they're quick to jump and try to remove other fighters from history and take their place as number one. But you got to really go back and look at how the fights were done, like how these fighters were winning, and what were the conditions of that time. All right. Were they for super championship belts or were they regular championship belts? We had that with Gennady Golovkin not too long ago. All right. These are the things we have it right now with Tank Davis. He's picking up belts in different divisions. They're not even the full title. We have to really dissect every little thing before we just go and, all right, he's an all-time great. I mean, even a couple of comments that I read that people were saying that he's the greatest of all time. Listen, if you feel that way, that is fine. That is up to you. But you're basing it off just him beating Wilder and dethroning Klitschko. That's it. That's it. Like no one else in boxing history has never fought under tougher circumstances. I know these fighters taking losses, but Fury literally have two big wins. Two. And I know two of them were against Wilder, right? But it's still just two opponents. And I don't want to make this video all about Fury, but Fury is the one that is a key guy that people are losing their minds over because he's the one that's still undefeated. He's beating Wilder. He's beating Klitschko, so I get it. He's going to get the bulk of the hype right now. All right? Right now, he's in a lead for me, right? I think he's in a lead. But there's still more work that needs to be done. Same with everybody else. Deontay Wilder. His fans, they pushed this victim mentality crap like he's not privileged. They force it on people because he's a black man, as if Joshua is not a black man himself. When I said that he gave Fury the opportunity, what I meant by that, and I've said this before, you guys heard me say this before, but the thing at the end of the day, Wilder, if you look at his title defenses, which he has a lot, and then they were using that as a marketing tool, because I think it's a marketing tool to sit here and talk about the amount of title defenses and compare him to Ali. Like, he has the same amount that Ali had with the 9 or 10. You know, Ali had around the same both the first 2 times he won the championship, right? But they're comparing him to Ali. But if we look at Ali and look at who he was facing. Look at who he had to fight under those conditions where he was the underdog. People thought this dude was going to get killed by Sonny Liston. People thought this dude was going to get killed by George Foreman. And people want to sit here and compare Deontay Wilder and his struggles as a black man as if he's not privileged. What are you talking about? It's disrespectful to compare him to these guys from a different time. It's not the same thing. It's ironic how Deontay Wilder chose to fight Tyson Fury when Fury at that time was the lineal champion. He was the lineal champion. But Tyson Fury was just getting back in the mix. Wilder had the title. Wilder was defending his titles. Or his title. Fury needed to fight someone to get back in the mix because he was gone. He was retired. So these guys agreed to fight, but it was under Wilder's terms. Fury was not with ESPN. It was under Wilder's terms and conditions. Because Wilder was the active boxer, the WBC champion. And when they had their rematch, again, it was under Wilder's terms. Yes, they made an agreement. Yes, they made it a joint collaboration between ESPN and Fox and stuff like they did in the third fight. I get it. But Wilder gave him the opportunity. He didn't go undisputed route with Joshua. He gave Fury the opportunity. And it's ironic he did that when people are sitting here talking about, as a black man, and talking about white privilege and, you know, how Fury's been protective and because of the color of his skin. When I hear that, and I'm like, damn, that's crazy. Like, how y'all think that Wilder got it hard. He got it so hard. Like, when I think of people from the past, you know, when I think of Jack Johnson and what he had to do to get his fight with Tommy Burns, they weren't even allowed to fight for the championship belt. He was the black champion. He wasn't the world champion. At a time where blacks were actually getting lynched, he was following Tommy Burns around to get the fight. He was annoying him at a time where you're not even supposed to do that. He was that crazy. He was putting pressure on a white fighter that didn't even have to give him a fight. And the fact that Jack Johnson won that fight, when he eventually lost, they didn't give another black fighter a title shot for years. It wasn't until Joe Louis. And they forced Joe Louis to not have any personality. You had Jack Johnson out here wilding out. He was doing things that black men weren't even allowed to do back then or say. I'm just saying, I'm comparing the conditions that these fighters were in. They were really living this life that you guys believe you're living. These guys were really living that life. It was a real thing at that time. But Wilder, in this scenario, he was the champion selecting his opponent, which was Tyson Fury at that time. The guy that was just coming back. You know, I found out that Floyd Patterson offered Sonny Liston Both black fighters, by the way. Only 12% of the total net of the fight. Only 12%. Floyd Patterson, who was a champion at that time, only 12% went to Sonny Liston. Just think about that. Sonny Liston, right? Who destroyed them both fights, right? Sonny Liston only got, and Sonny Liston was the favorite as well, 12% of everything. Just think about that. These fighters today are privileged. You know, when Wilder and Joshua didn't happen the first time, it was because even though it was Wilder's top highest pay up to that point, what was it, like maybe 6 times the amount he's ever gotten paid? People were saying, well, we want a percentage against Joshua. We don't want, why are you giving Joseph Parker a percentage and not giving me a percentage? Why are you giving me a straight amount? You know, I want a percentage of the revenue from this fight, which I'm fine with. I'm not arguing that. He has a point, right? Even though this is so much more, I want a percentage of this fight because it might be more than what you guys are offering me up front. The 12 or 15 million that it was at that time. I can't remember. But this is what make these fighters special, compare. And this is the only reason why I'm bringing this up. These guys at once upon a time, they wanted to be champions so bad that they were willing to risk their life, their purses, their finances. They were willing to risk it all to get the opportunity to fight for these titles because they didn't have it. Sonny Liston could have said, I'm the favorite for this fight. Why am I only getting that much for this fight? He could have turned around and said, I'm not doing it. But if Sonny Liston did that, he would have never had his title opportunity. I mean, maybe later, maybe Muhammad Ali would have fought Floyd Patterson first and just had fought him and won. And maybe Sonny Liston after. But regardless, it would have changed history forever. You guys get what I'm saying? Jack Johnson, if he just said, you know what, these guys, I don't want to play with this situation. Like, these guys running the show, these white men at the time are not allowing Negroes to fight, right? He could have just fell back, but it would have changed history forever. These guys did something that was special. So when people in this boxing community make it seem like Wilder is a victim, I find it disrespectful. Because Wilder is privileged to me in many, many ways. In fact, I commend Wilder for the fact that he don't have the technical ability of most of these fighters, but he was able to compete at the highest level. I think that's the part that people are missing here out of this trilogy. Tyson Fury, people feel that Tyson Fury is so good that they're already comparing him to the all-time greats. Yet, in 3 fights, he was knocked down 4 times by Deontay Wilder, a guy that people believe can't box at all. They say he can't box, but he was able to continuously drop Fury at times. Even had a draw with him. Even if you think Fury won the fight, Wilder was good enough to at least do that and beat other fighters like a Luis Ortiz. I know he's not on Fury or he's not this big great fighter. I'm not doing that with him. But even Luis Ortiz, who was the more experienced amateur, right? The more technically sound boxer, the better counterpuncher. Hits hard too. Yes, he was older. But him being a tricky southpaw, the way that Wilder was able to connect and hurt and rock Ortiz throughout that fight and eventually stopping him, I give him credit for that. Does that just make him ATG status right away? No, it doesn't. Is his defenses, title defenses, like some of the all-time greats from different times? No. I respect what he did, but there's still more work that needs to be done. Yes, you should still fight Joshua. Because that's what the best, and these all-time greats like Ezra Charles and Jersey Joe and all of these guys ran it back. They had multiple fights. Sometimes they weren't title fights. They just fought each other. But now the fans, which is weird because the fans who are here to watch boxing are co-signing fights that if a fighter says, I'm not taking this fight, they're co-signing it. They're saying that, yeah, I'm with you. What are you talking about? If we don't get the fight, we don't get the fight. As a boxing fan, you should want to see the fight. I don't care if Joshua loses to Usyk or Wilder loses to Fury. I don't give a damn. I've been saying this since day one. These two better not retire until I see them fight. Joshua and Deontay Wilder better fight. And to be honest with you, and this today, because I'm going through every single one of them. Let me make this clear. I'm going through every single one of them because no one has proven dominance in this generation of heavyweights. I don't put any of them above Klitschko. Now, when it's all said and done, based on what they could do in the future, I might. But right now, I don't put them. I don't care if Klitschko lost to two of them. I don't put any of these guys ahead of Klitschko. Klitschko ran his division for years, and it might have not been the best heavyweight ever, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It was a weak era to me, but it doesn't matter because the Klitschko brothers and Vlad went longer, but a lot of us prefer the other brother because of the way he fights. But regardless, at least these guys prove their dominance in the division. You might have not liked who was available at that time, but they proved their dominance in the division for a long time. They had a nice long reign. And I can't say the same about these fighters. In certain scenarios, and I'm blaming, I might blame one over the other, but at the end of the day, I don't see any of these guys. Joshua, I love his character. That's why he's my favorite. We all know that I love Anthony Joshua. Love his character. Great dude. I like what he stands for. I like the fact that he had the courage to come in. Another fighter that wasn't boxing that long. All right. Won the gold medal. I don't even think he won the gold medal fight. That's my personal opinion. I'm a fan, but I'm going to keep it real. I don't even think he won the gold medal. But he came in a short amount of fights, he was able to win a championship while he was still in the teens. He didn't wait till 40-something knockouts to do it. 30-something knockouts to do it. He won it right away. He got busy. He fought his rival, Dillian White, who beat him in the amateurs. He fought him and beat him. They could have easily avoided him for a while because they already knew he lost to Dillian White. And Dillian White was undefeated and he was getting knockouts at the time. It was a dangerous fight for Joshua. I give him credit for all of that. But my problem with Joshua is that he was never aggressive enough to make a Wilder fight. He wasn't aggressive enough. Same with Wilder with Joshua. Whoever really wanted that fight, they would have been sitting there ringside stalking the other guy every time. Now, I know Wilder, he was at the Klitschko fight. He was out there, but was he aggressive while he was out there? Hell no. They was loving him out in the UK. It was just an experience. You can tell in the interviews he was doing with Tony Bellew and stuff, he wasn't being aggressive towards Joshua. He was just loving the experience of being out there. The whole Joshua thing didn't start until after the Klitschko fight. But neither one of them was ever that aggressive. Wilder should be sitting ringside. You got 3 belts. Wilder has 1 more. You should be ringside in every single one of those fights. Every single one. Every single one of those fights, you should be ringside. You should be there stalking this dude. I want to fight you. You should be coming to America. I want to fight you. You know how like Lennox Lewis and Bo had a little interaction? And Bo was like, yo, man, I'm not ducking you, yada, yada, yada. And Lennox is like, yo, I'll knock you out. I want to knock you out. I like that. Where is that? You guys are quick to call these guys ATGs, and none of them are doing that. None of them are doing that. You're so quick to just throw these guys in there with guys that fought multiple times and did more. Not just 1 or 2 fighters like these guys are doing. They fought 1 or 2 great fighters. 1 or 2. Wilder fought 1 and Fury and lost. Didn't have a win in that trilogy. Fury fought Wilder, won the trilogy, beat Klitschko. Joshua beat Klitschko, beat some of the active guys. You know, he beat Povetkin. You know, he beat Povetkin. He beat White. He beat Parker. He beat a lot of undefeated guys in between. But you know what? I want to see more. I want to see more. And if you don't always win, it's okay. You don't have to always win. You don't always have to win. Archie Moore, you know why he was a legend at that time? He was actively fighting all those guys I named earlier. He fought all those guys. He fought Marciano. He fought all of those guys. All of those guys he fought. He was still sticking around. He fought Patterson. He fought Muhammad Ali. He fought Ezra Charles. He fought all of those guys, man. He was around that era. He fought them all. He had a lot of losses, but the guy was fighting 5, 6, 7 times a year. This is what made him great. He had a lot of losses, but he was fighting everybody. So are we just going to throw these guys and remove him from the ATG top 20 list or whatever, whatever, you're going to do it? I mean, he personally not my top 10 heavyweights. But these guys are so quick. I see guys that's already throwing these guys in there. They're not in there. They're not. They're not even, first of all, the guys from the 80s and 90s is hard enough to go by. Joe Louis had, we could go about Joe Louis, but I mean, even just starting at Larry Holmes' time, this guy had 20 defenses. Just going past him, and from his time to now, it's hard enough. It's hard enough to get past him, Lewis, Holyfield, Tyson. I mean, we could say something about all of these guys, but at least those guys, Riddick Bowe, at least those guys fought each other. They had their rematches. Yes. It's trilogy. I don't think, people are complaining about the trilogy. The trilogy is not that much of a problem. What happens is, in between the trilogy, you got guys like Fury that's talking about retirement again. He has nothing to prove. That's my problem. He likes to do what he wants and leave. That's not all-time greatness to me. I'm sorry, it's not. You win one fight and then you disappear. As a champion, and that's why I respect Joshua as a champion, because there's an obligation to stay champion. Holmes, 20 title defenses. Joe Louis, 25 title defenses. Ali, 3-time world champion. 3-time. He won it 3 times. And the first 2 times, he defended it like crazy, 9, 10 times. This is greatness. Going into wars, classic fights with wars between Holyfield and Bowe, and having multiple fights. Mike Tyson, the youngest to do it. This guy went in there And, people will sit here and say that his era was weak. I've even heard it with Larry Holmes. People say that the era was weak at the time. That happens. I've even heard it with Rocky Marciano. Rocky came in, didn't have a long career. He kind of came in at the point where Joe Louis was at the end of his career, and Jersey Joe and all of those guys, they were kind of pushing closer to the end of their career. So Rocky kind of came in. He had a short career, but he did a lot of damage. He did a lot of work, and then he ended up retiring undefeated, right? In a short period of time, he wasn't a pro that long. But so we could go through these guys like Larry Holmes and all these guys that people may say like, his run was good, but he kind of came in the tail end of other fighters. People are always gonna complain about something, which is whatever. It's normal. Hold on, let me plug in my laptop. All right, so yeah, people are gonna always complain. All right, but at least these guys, they did something special. They did something that was seriously hard to do. And they kept at it. And they defended. They defended. Right now, I happen to be the most impressed with this guy, Usyk. This guy, Usyk, did exactly what Holyfield did. But now he's gone up. And now he's unified at heavyweight just like that. Just like that. As something that has taken years of fights that we still didn't get yet, Usyk could just pop up and beat Joshua. Now, we got to see what happens in a rematch, but Usyk has already cemented himself as one of the greatest cruiserweights, top 2 cruiserweights of all time. He's already cemented that. Now he's up in heavyweight. And gave us one of his best performances in his career, in my opinion, at heavyweight. I have no complaints with that guy. He's doing exactly what he's supposed to do. I know I'm trying to go through all 3 of them, but I don't have no problems with that guy. I really don't. And it would be funny? Not that I'm rooting for him. So I definitely wasn't rooting for him against Joshua. I like him, but Joshua's my dude. I was definitely rooting for Joshua. But what if this guy messes around and wins all the titles and become undisputed? You know what I'm saying? Like, if this guy wins, whether he fights Fury or not, let's say Fury retires, or let's say he beats Fury, but regardless, let's just say this guy is the one that ends up being an undisputed. The guy that's not even a heavyweight. The guy that hasn't even been in that division. I mean, he's fought heavyweights before, obviously. But let's just say it's him. That's real ATG shit. There's levels. This is what I'm trying to explain to y'all. There's levels. Certain fighters do certain things to make themselves special. I think Wilder and Fury, I think when it's all said and done, people are going to remember the trilogy. People are going to remember what happened in that first fight when Fury got up. People are going to remember what happened in that third fight when they both got dropped. People are going to even remember the second fight, when Fury just kind of destroyed them and we weren't expecting that. That's class as shit. People are going to remember that more than the Klitschko one. Yeah, you beat Klitschko, but people remember Joshua doing it more than what you did. And people say, oh, Klitschko was, he was coming back. He was older. I understand that. But guess what? We loved the fight with Joshua. And Joshua stopped him. He really engaged with him. That's what made Fury special in the second fight against Wilder. The same thing. He didn't just beat Wilder. He beat him down and stopped him at a time where we didn't even know Fury was capable of doing that. Now he cemented it by doing it again, but he had to work a lot harder. I knew it was going to be tougher. I picked him to win, but I knew the third time around, I knew it was going to be a lot tougher than the second time. Because Wilder could work on some things. All right? There's still work that needs to be done, man, and there's still fights. And I've said this to all this, like I made this. I might as well have just went live because this is actually being a lot longer than what I expected it to be. But the heavyweight division is still requires a lot of work, man. And they don't always have to be, you know, it doesn't always have to be staying undefeated, you know? It doesn't have to be like that. You know, not for nothing, but as much as these guys had exchanges with each other, Wilder and Dillian White should have had fought by now. They really should have. And I'm not even talking about no WBC stuff. I just think Dillian White is a guy that had fights where people wouldn't think that he would win. You know, he had a Joseph Parker fight, which was like, it was like 50-50. I don't know, you know. You had the Oscar Rivas fight, and I know Oscar Rivas isn't no legendary fighter yet, right? He still have much to prove. But going into the fight, a lot of people thought that Oscar Rivas was going to knock him out, right? I mean, he's a tough dude. He got power. And, you know, I give Dillian White credit. He got stopped by Povetkin and was able to come back and stop Povetkin. You know, and this is one of those guys where, like, for Wilder, for me, ATG, like, I would like Wilder to fight that guy. I would like Wilder to fight Anthony Joshua. You know, I would even like Wilder to fight a Usyk. Just to give us the fight. As a boxing fan, I want to see it. It's not always about who wins. It's all about just let us get the fight. That's what we want. But you got certain people on here that are against that. They care about everything outside of fights. There's always going to be racial tension and racial bias. Most of it is racial bias. People will make it they'll make more or less. Yes, there's a lot of racism. Of course, racism exists. But a lot of it is racial bias. There is a big difference. I said this before. Racial bias is when you're just rooting for a guy because of the color of their skin. And that's very normal. Or ethnicity. It could be whatever. You might be just going with your own. You know? It's a lot of tribalism in boxing. It's okay. Now, real racism, meaning, you know, or prejudice, because that's what it is. Racism is used, totally misused now. But prejudice is just hating a specific group of people, you know, because the color of their skin. It could be for whatever. It could be for whatever. You just can't stand them. I get a lot of those comments. I do. You know why? Because people see that I'm black. They come here and they just leave comments. They don't even listen to the video. They just look at the title and they just leave comments. Like, didn't even say what I was saying. You know, they just like, oh, you black dudes. I get a lot of those comments. So listen, it's a real thing. It's a real thing what black people do to others. It's a real thing. You know, but we got to remember that at the end of the day, this is a sport. And this is all about the fights. This is for the betterment of the sport. So if you guys keep sticking and making everything about race every single time you make videos, right? And not just, that doesn't just go for the people that are saying it directly. Those go for the channels too that are biased towards or against certain groups of people. They might not directly say it, but they are. I've seen quite a few channels that you guys like to bring up the LDBC a lot, right? You guys always attack them, but there are a lot of channels that are extremely against every black fighter. They pretend like they're not, but they are. They are. I've seen it, and no one ever calls them out. Now, that's not my job. I let you guys on YouTube deal with that. That's you. I'm here for me. I'm here for boxing. Okay? I'm not here. You guys always like to bring up other channels in my comments, want me to talk about them. I'm not here for them. I didn't start YouTube for these other channels. All right? I didn't watch one channel when I came on YouTube. I didn't watch one. I came here for me because I love boxing and I wanted to speak boxing. And as my time on here, I started to get to know some of these other channels, but then I started seeing how they operated, and I saw that, you know, I wasn't really feeling the content, man. There was not enough boxing in it. And that's the problem with a lot of these YouTube channels. It's not enough boxing. It's just all bias. It's all fanboy shit. It's not enough boxing in your video. Sorry, I can't listen to you. It's not enough boxing. You ain't saying shit. But yeah, all these guys got work to do, man. And that's all I want to see, man. You know, again, I made a video about Wilder the other day about should he retire, and I basically said he shouldn't. I hope he recovers. His broken hand and everything. I hope he recovers, and I hope he has the will to want to fight. Stay with Malik Scott. Keep working on what you guys are doing. I personally think the one thing he needs to do is cut down in weight. But if he's gonna stick around, I would love to see him still fight Joshua, Dillian White, Usyk, maybe, depending on, what's going to happen in that order, whatever, I don't know how things are going to work out. I hope Fury stays around, because him just beating Wilder and leaving is not enough for me. I'm not satisfied with it. I'm sorry. It's great. It's good. It's going to be cemented. But for Fury, I think there's a lot more that could be done. It's not enough for me. There's more that needs to be done. And that goes for him. That goes for Wilder. That goes for Anthony Joshua. Anthony Joshua, there's things going to be doing. Maybe he does change trainers. Maybe he does change things in preparation for a fight. Not just cut down in weight. Not just work on his conditioning. But there's other things that he can change in his style. He has time. Maybe we could see some of those changes. There's still things that he can work on. He still have time to work on. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe he sticks to what he's doing, takes another loss from Usyk, and goes on to fight Deontay Wilder, which is my dream fight in the heavyweight division. That is still my number one most wanted fight. I don't even care if it's not a title fight. I'm a real boxing fan, not like these weirdos on the internet. So anyway, close this out, man. I think I said everything I needed to be said. Yeah. Again, if you're new here, subscribe to the channel. Like the video, dislike the video. I know I said a lot here. I'm just kind of like, I'm not stressed or anything. I just kind of like want things to be different in the sport. And I think the one thing that pisses me off, like, people are going to make fake news. People are going to make, bring up different stuff that's irrelevant. I don't like when people disrespect the legends, okay? I also don't like when fans are cool with just accepting people, like, their personal feelings and just, like, this fighter is better than this one when they never fought. Okay, I don't know where that started. I think it's just the times we're living in. We're living in the social media times. But we got to bring the sport back. You guys can't complain about the sport and just accept the fact that fights are not getting made at the same time. So you can't complain and then be part of the problem. I don't accept. I think assessing a fight, having common opponents, it's definitely fair to bring up common opponents like a Dominic Breazeale fighting Joshua and Wilder. Like a Eric Molina fighting Joshua and Wilder. Those are cool to properly assess the fight. Klitschko against Joshua and Fury. Those are cool, but they're good for just assessing the fight, leading up to the fight. But I still want to see the actual fight. The actual fight means the world to me. Okay? You guys are talking about everything else but the actual fight. And if you want to be about the drama, you got to understand, if you're going to talk about privileges and race and all of this stuff, networks, the politics, if you're going to talk about all this stuff, right, you still got to remember when it's time for these fighters to get in the ring that night, you're not in there with them. They're alone when they're in there. It's those two and the referee. That's it. You guys got to understand that all of that stuff is for you. It's not for the fighter. It's for you. It's for you. You know, when I hear Wilder say, you know, I'm glad I had the right people around me and stuff like that, I get that. But mentally, how much into going to this last fight with Fury, how much were you thinking about you losing because you were cheating? Did you feel that you lost to the better fighter, or did you feel that you lost because he was cheated? Like, a lot of people are saying, well, Fury proved that he's the best. This is Wilder fans. Not all of them. Some Wilder fans still believe that he lost again because he was cheated. But a lot of Wilder fans are saying, well, Fury's the king right now. Wilder's number 2. Okay, well, now we got that from you. You're getting that now. But leading up to the fight, a lot of you were saying that we're only here for a third time because Fury kept cheating. And he's going to find another way to cheat. Y'all was talking about Glovegate again the day before the fight. Y'all not talking about the ring. What's going down in that ring? Not enough. That's my problem. That's the problem I have. All right? So stop disrespecting the legends, all right? And stop trying to make it seem like we're living at times that we're not living in, please. It's very disrespectful, all right? There's a lot of things that go down. I understand that. There's a lot of fouls that's going on in sports. There's a lot of things that's happened, dirty things, corrupt things that's happening behind the scenes. But stop disrespecting the legends that actually lived through it. They had to live through it. They had to wake up and deal with it every single day they stepped outside that door. They didn't have the opportunities to even say that this guy has a right, complexion for the protection. They weren't even allowed to say that. There's a difference. There are levels in this. They didn't even have the privilege to give, to just say, the fact that you have the privilege just to give a white fighter the opportunity, it just goes to show the difference in the way the sport is. You gave him the opportunity, treated him like a brother when there was another black champion right across the pond holding the other titles. I said this before, but it'll be new to some of y'all. All right? I hate to dip into the race stuff, but I keep seeing it in my comments. Dude, just keep it boxing. That's it. Keep it boxing. If you shut up and stop talking about it, we don't got to keep hearing about it. Let these dudes scrap. All right, I'm out, man. Peace.